And perhaps not.
Don't hello me. You are 20 minutes late coming back from lunch break. What seems to be the problem?
Well, you see what happened was, I still stopped by the one and got my food clean back out. When I was backing out of my parking spot, somebody gave me audacity to not hold me and tell me to hurry up and get out of this spot. So you know me, I tried to pull that phone. I'm probably going to end up late here. You go ahead and take me off the block.
That right there has probably got to be the most ridiculous, outrageous, and best excuse that I've ever heard to not come back to work. I hope you have a wonderful time at the parking lot, and I will see you in the morning.
Oh, there he is. Hello.
Don't help.
Asking my wife all the stupid questions she asks me. Asking my wife all the stupid.
Disney characters using the treadmill.
Head of the law, man. That's all. That's no joke.
Jesus. What the hell? Why is this missed it? And it's been 5 minutes. Why?
Disney characters using the treadmill.
Head of the law, man. That's all.
There we are. Hey, honey. Okay, let's hope that's enough there now. Oh boy. Darwin Award winners here.
See me in your room. Projector through the phone.
Part 13 of this series, we can run loads of people embarrassing social media. probably the dumbest dumb decision I've ever heard of. Back in 2009 in Pennsylvania, USA, a 17-year-old was rushed to A&E after claiming police had planted his
Here too, I got my dinner.
Obviously, the police were called, but the injuries he sustained didn't match his story. It's only then that the team revealed what had actually happened. He'd gone rifling through his grandmother's possessions and dropped an American class of very large firecracker containing some 80 grams of flash powder. They were often used. Gone rifling through his grandmother's possessions. Obviously, the police were called, but the injuries he sustained didn't match his story. It was only then that the teen revealed what had actually happened. He'd gone rifling through his grandmother's possessions and found an M80 explosive, an American class of very large firecracker containing some 80 grams of flash powder. They were often used by the U.S. military to simulate grenade explosions, but they were banned for sale in 1966 by the Child Protection Act. And we're about to find out why. This idiot had taken the firecracker up to his room and, in a stunningly stupid move, began to repeatedly light and extinguish the fuse. However, during one of these insane cycles, he lit it up and couldn't put it out. Instead of throwing the explosive out of a window or as far away as possible, he instead jammed the thing between his thighs and put his hands over it to muffle the sound of the explosion. Big mistake. The resulting blast cost him his right hand, right leg, and most of his junk. While he survived, he lost the ability to reproduce and thus removed any future DNA of his from the gene pool. I think I just saw Darwin give this story a thumbs up from his grave.
I was having a French bread pizza, a couple of them, honey.
That are obviously a little more dangerous than others. And back in 1819, no one had a riskier or more fantastical job than Sophie Blanchard, also known as Madame Blanchard.
Yes.
Made with the world's smoothest vodka plus real juice. Blue White Claw Vodka Soda.
For a great low rate, make the right call and go to general.
Wow, a Shaction figure.
Wow.
You're familiar with the tale of Skull and Hottie, bringers of day and night.
Oh yeah, the wolf devil.
Aye. They were born of the archwolf Hrothgar, a great nemesis of the Aesir gods. Odin captured them as pups and kept them in the kennels of Asgard to hold his foe at bay. But when the sun and moon grew mutinous and stood still, Odin put Skull and Hottie to use. With his ancient magics, he cast the wolves to the heavens, and they began their chase. And long shall they chase, but not endlessly. For it is foretold that someday Skull and Hottie will catch and devour their prey. And that day shall be Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods.
But Ragnarok is supposed to be Odin's doom, isn't it? Why would he set the wolves loose if it fulfills the prophecy?
Precisely the question, lad. It's always about control. The wolves determine when Ragnarok begins, and now he controls the wolves. A battle fought on his timetable is a battle he better stands to win.
The true tale of Skull and Hati. Born of the great Vagar, Hrothgar, Skull, spawn of he who lies, and Hati, spawn of he who hates, were caged in the halls of Asgard, until the great Varg was bound to the great stone Hjol. The two pups, Skull the larger male, and Hati the smaller female, were beginning to reflect their father's enormous size. Odin began to fear that Tyr's dominion over the spawn of
There we go. That's another one.
was lessening. At the same time, Sol and Mani, son and daughter of Mundalfari, had begun riding slower through the sky, making it fewer days until the coming of Ragnarok. In rebellion against their imprisonment by the Old Father and the vanity of their father. So Odin cast the great Vargs into the sky with the charge to hunt the sun and moon. Skoll, the stronger and faster friend of the Most Wind, chased the priest of the shining sun. And Hati to chase the slower, smaller moon priestess. This pursuit caused the two to ride faster, increasing the number of days until the dawn of Ragnarok. After Odin did this, the Volva predicted that the Vargs consuming the sun and moon would ring in the end of Fimbulvitr and free Hrothvitnir from the mountain, making them the harbingers of Ragnarok.
Okay. Quite possibly, hon. I honestly, I remember there's a few, like 1 or 2 steps ahead of time, but it's where we're going to be heading here in a minute, yeah.
With tension, suspicion, and superstition. And our clan, of course, has kept stories about all of these things for generations. Many of which have been lost to the hands of time of the general public. Even stories of how one might make a vampire, or perhaps how one might even find a vampire. And what may surprise you is that there are certain countries around the world, even including certain areas of the United States and the UK, where this knowledge can not only get you jailed, but in some areas of the world, it can see you executed. So with that in mind, grab a seat, my friend, grab a drink. I've got a story for you. a lifetime. There are even laws on the books to this very day in countries like Ireland and Spain that can see you thrown behind bars for spreading this very information. And in the United States and Canada, there is still the possibility of fines and potential jail time for the perpetuation of the consuming of human flesh and blood. Though it is important to note there are also some areas in the United States where that is a protected practice. We'll get to that. But the teaching of those occult arts is still widely frowned upon in both United States and Canada.
They're not quite dragonized, but we'll run into Lloyd later, and pretty much he'll end up explaining how that works a little bit more so. Well, it'll be more a specific comment of his to pay attention to.
Usually, and most often, human beings. They have to have some level of cognitive functioning that they understand that they are subsisting on human beings, and to a degree have the idea that that is not necessarily a good thing. All the while they have to be relatively human-like themselves. And again, that's something.
Very well.
But I say relatively because as we delve deeper into these ancient tales of vampires, we're going to reach an area that might explain a little bit where the uncanny valley comes from. Now, there are many myths in perpetuation about vampires, so let's talk about some of the common ones and where they come from, and sort of get those out of the way so we can get down to the nitty-gritty. I'm sure you're all aware of Hollywood films that perpetuate the idea that vampires are afraid of the sun, they are grossly allergic to garlic and crucifixes, even though they can transform into puffs of mist and even swarms of bats. There is this idea that they are eternal beings forever.
I guess the story has traveled all the way here.
Of mankind has been hibernating for long extended periods while man repopulates, so that it can then come back and start feasting once again. Now, the reason why we're going to get all of these other ways is because they're completely irrelevant to the story.
Thank you.
That the clan keeps us, most of them are relatively recent by way of their development in popular culture. Now, vampires as a singular concept didn't really exist until the 1700s when the word vampire entered the English lexicon, giving form to this vague creature that had perpetuated folklore all around the world for thousands of years. Whether we're talking about the Striga of Slavic culture or the Revenant of Scandinavian myth, and even the Chupacabra of Mesoamerica, blood-sucking killers have a long and rich history.
Weapon shop!
Most of what we understand about them today is relatively recent, thanks to the novelization rise in the 1700s, thanks to the rise of easy printing, as well as the massive bang that was the film industry that began in the 1800s. Much of what we know today came from the rise of popular fiction in media, both written and visual. And getting the obvious ones out of the way first, the crucifix. Where did this come from? Well, it was long believed that the crucifix after the death of Jesus Christ could expel any sort of evil servant of Satan, Lucifer, and specifically anything that was of an spirit, so anything that could have to do with possession or possibly even the aura of an evil creature could be cast out by an evil demon, or the crucifix could cast out an evil demon in the same way that Jesus Christ had cast the evil out.
Well, screw you too, buddy.
And this sort of just haphazardly ended up translating into vampire myths. And there are a few different areas where it's believed that this stems from, but we don't have anything that is concrete 100%. This is why we believe the crucifix is given to vampires. It's just a sort of a culmination of cultural things that led to that belief. The turning into bats is another very simple one. Bats tended to bite people, especially vampire bats and other large bats would tend to bite people. And they had very long, sharpish teeth. So it was long believed that these creatures were transmogrified of other larger creatures, and it was just a silly superstition that sort of perpetuated its way down, and then was further emaciated into fiction, and then became the solid idea that we have today, whether it's by Chuck in things like Adam Sandler's Transylvania, or something more along the lines of an action film by way of underworld.
Yeah, kinda.
These ideas perpetuated all throughout popular culture surrounding vampires. Now, silver and gold have long been considered story of them being the purest and most prized metals obviously gave a further rise to this idea that silver would obviously cast out any sort of evil creature like werewolves and vampires and mitigate them. And as an interesting note, because of that purity of silver, that's also why they believe that vampires could not see their reflection, because mirrors back in the time, in the 1700s, were silver-backed mirrors. They had literal silver lining on the back, and that is why vampires would not have been able to see their reflection in that mirror. No ghosts, nobody, any other sort of supernatural or unnatural or evil creature, because of the purity of the metal. But mirrors today are not back that way, so technically vampires could be among us everywhere, and we wouldn't know, unless they were biting you and sucking all of your blood out of you. We'd probably have a fair idea that that individual was a vampire. And silver and golden swords were also often used in Nordic and Celtic myths to slay great monsters and sometimes even gods and demigods, so that gave even more credence to this idea that if you wanted to slay monsters, you use silver or gold. Now, these last two are the ones that have some level of legitimacy to them in the way that they are founded, and the first being, of course, garlic. Garlic is actually a powerful natural antibiotic, and it has long been used to combat blood diseases, and it was believed in the early era of the superstition of vampires that vampirism was either a curse or a disease of the blood, so garlic would be believed to derive out either that curse or that disease. And again, weirdly, that's one of the ones that has some level of legitimacy. If there was a vampiric disease that could go into your blood, garlic would be a hell of a way to get rid of it. And lastly is stakes to the heart. Again, that would just about do anyone in. Stake anyone or anything in a house with anything. Chances are that's going to do them in, so yeah, that's got some level of legitimacy to it. Now that we've got the stereotypes out of the way, let's talk specifically about vampires that come from Ireland, and that's why you're all here. Vampires from Ireland and Celtic myths. Now, for those of you who dig nitpicky, these are the legends as my clan keeps them. We are going to mention some of the mainline beliefs around these creatures, but stories, so buckle in, here we go. First is the Darag Dua, or Darag Dua, which is the red drinker, or the drinker of blood, exclusively a female fae or demon. The Darag Dua has always been a spirit of vengeance. Also, I want to mention the oldest pronunciation is Darag Duro. So that's just for those of you that are interested in the pronunciation. Well, the most common tale of the Darag Dura is to come back to life as a spirit of vengeance and to take revenge on her evil, greedy, mistreating husband, and usually his fresh lover and wife. That tale is much more mainline, and the clan record is something a bit different. The Darag Dua is born as a born creature. In other words, demons that can be created using the contractable means. The tradition of the Darag Dua is a very simple one. Allow me to remind you now that it's considered widely to be witchcraft and is illegal in many countries. So has it. The way that the Darag Dua can be made is to take a woman before her 20th year and you feed her the blood of a dead man on her deathbed. This simple spell is believed to interrupt the process of the harbingers of death coming to collect the soul of one who died. This would confuse them, and in order to maintain that confusion, the Darag Dua would have to drink the blood pretty much exclusively of young men somewhere in the same age range as the woman would have been when she was transformed into the Darag Dua. Or if she were to bite into a man who was too close to death, the veil would be lifted and the spirits of death would once again know that she was bound for the next life, and they would track her down and what was left her wretched soul. Now, this is one of 12 ways that the clan records that a Darag Dua would have been made.
Hey Google, set an alarm for 7:30 p.m.
You got it. Your alarm set for today at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you.
A vampire. But with that said, these baby bloodsuckers are nothing in comparison to the great the great
Okie dokie.
evil dwarf. Now, there are a couple of different ways that this is said. Throughout Ireland, you're going to find all different kinds of people pronounced different ways. There are some who call it Abertach, there are some who call it Abertosh, there are some who call it the Abertah. And any one of those could be true, it just depends on which dialect you're going with. I prefer Abertach or Abertah. Now, the Abertah is often described as a flesh-eating, blood-sucking wolf, small man, who is a magician and or wizard. So a wolf, blood-sucking wizard. Now, for any of you who have watched my videos on the Air She and the Leonin She and the Danish She, you know that the whole idea of the Seelie and Unseelie, the She, comes after the fact. The She, the Air She, are the little people beneath the mountain. And that was very much an orchestrated attempt to shrink the old gods. And it's no coincidence that this great beast is called a dwarf in many of the tales, but all stories referencing him have him being gigantic and incredibly tall and terrifying.
Yay!
Now,
Right here, Hun is a very, very important part of the story.
Killed by the legendary chieftains Finn MacCool and Cathain, he was a great beast to be defeated by heroes of legend and myth, and every time that he was killed, he was always buried upside down, which is an interesting note that there are several other Fae who exist or sleep upside down, including leprechauns and dryads, but that's a story for another time. In both instances with Finn and Cathain, they had to kill him several times, and after many resurrections, both ended up burying him upside down, his feet facing the sky and his head facing the hill, and he then remained there permanently afterwards, or so the stories go. Again, all references to the Abertah seem to point to the idea that he was in fact a great giant of a creature, often described as towering over all other men and warriors, being pale of flesh, long, thin limbs, with a large head, not dissimilar from the descriptions you would give in modern folklore and fiction of Dracula and the Nosferatu. And in clan stories, the Abertah
Yeah, Dart, she just completely passed out. I'm sure she's fine.
15 feet tall with a massive, strangely proportioned oversized head and large mouth with long, dangling limbs. A large, static creature that rarely ever left from his cave, walked his walls, rarely ever stood up to his full height, except for during the winter when he would migrate between caves. So clearly our clan records something different than the silly tales of the blood-sucking war and the heroes who slay him, and adding to the credibility and credence of this story is the name of the grave where the dwarf was allegedly buried. Snartavati Ormond, or Snartavati, near Londonderry, translates roughly to giant grave. And this is the alleged burial place of the Abertah. Now this creature is ancient, older than the stories that remember him. A primordial creature from when the nights were dark and long. Never hunting, but instead drawing people in with alluring sounds and mimicry and faint smells, pleasing aromas, giving the ambiance of warmth. When a poor unfortunate soul was drawn in by his treachery, sword and bolt, hidden his stomach, the blood would drain from their body, the flesh would be stripped of its pigments, and all other hair and follicles would let itself go. And then he would vomit them back up.
Those were stars, honey.
Pale and emaciated, left to wander like a mindless zombie. And it was said that these creatures looked awful. They looked so huge, strange, and frightening. They looked like people, but with exaggerated and strange features.
Wow. I know where that is. Okay. I had to think for a minute on that, but I got it. Maybe I know.
Like the other top, these were just strangely human. Looking quite right. And this might be when these people see something.
Well, yeah, the stars are pretty big in this game, hun. Let's see here. Back up here. That's what we gotta do.
After several years, centuries of migrating to Europe.
Oh, nope. I have to hit a switch before it'll let me go through, yeah. So otherwise that'll happen.
All of the lands were once which found the great mountain.
Lucky if I can.
The Avatar performed the great North Sea of death.
Oh, there's what I was looking for. There we go.
And the strange stories of my clan keeps wonderful, incredible mysteries of the
Very abnormally large, I'd say yes, indeed.
I suggest you head on over and check that out. See you
Wait,
there, my
that's it.
friend. And until then, stay bloodthirsty. And remember, all hail the Black Dragon. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, there's how we open that. Oh, there we go.
After I knocked, a woman in her 40s opened the door. She looked at me warily as I fought
Yeah,
down the urge
I'm
to
not
tell
listening
her
to
that
a
I
3-hour story. I don't have that kind of time. The Weaver of Lies, the Norse god of trickery and deceit. He's known by a lot of names.
So what do you say? Let's have a conversation about this horsebanger and his kids. Grab a seat. Grab a drink. I've got a story for you, friends. Welcome back, wayward adventurers and travelers. I am Castle. This is my cousin here. We talk about myth and lore and tales of yore, and more specifically and usually lore that comes from the very long traditions of my family. So when people want to go into the comments and ask, where is the source? Well, this is handed down to family, so I am the source. If you don't trust the source, you don't have to do the thing. Let us get in to Loki, the trickster god of the Ace. First and foremost, we need to talk about some terms. When we talk about the Aesir, the Vanya, the Jotnar, these are not races of people, but instead they are more like ethnic groups. They are tribes, clans, if you will. That is very important when
Looks like we're good here.
putting in context.
Just wanted to check that before we headed out.
In Norse mythology, people like to make it like they're all these different species. Typically, they're not, but sometimes they are. It gets to be a little bit complicated. But let's get into it. Loki, first and foremost, is a title. It is not his name. Some of you may know Loki's true name, and some of you may know how he earned that title. But for those of you who don't, stick around to the end. We're going to talk about that after we've gone through a summary of all of the stories about Loki and how they all kind of link together into this purpose. Now, we are first going to go over some of the historical mentions of Loki, but I'm not going to go into detail on all of the poems and the parts of the Eddas that he is mentioned in. Instead, I'm going to have that listed right down here. I'll have a link in the description below where you can either purchase a book so that you can go and read those stories for yourself, or if you don't want the book, I will post some resources where you can read those poems for free online, as well as some summaries that I feel are, even if they're not perfect, they're apt enough that they're okay to use. So what we are going to do is we are going to bridge those major gaps in the stories and hopefully provide a little bit of a clearer understanding about who Loki is, what his intentions were, and what sort of god man he was. So we're going to talk about Loki, we're going to talk about his children, and we're going to talk about his purpose in the whole of the Norse mythos. And for those of you who stick around to the end, as usual, there'll be a little bit of bonus.
You have a green forest!
And a special thank you for all of you who stick around through the entirety of the video. We'll leave likes and subscribe, you help the head of the channel, and you make sure that the tavern stays thriving. You are the lifeblood, I appreciate it. One more thing that needs to be mentioned before we get into the meat and potatoes of this is that Loki is what we refer to as a traveller. Now, in our lore, there are travellers and travelling gods. They are sort of the same, but not exactly. Loki is a traveller in the sense that he, as a avatar or character, appears more towards mythology. Now, the difference between a traveller and a travelling god is that travelling gods appear in multiple mythologies over the Norse mythology. Lifetime means they travelled during a single lifetime and were known during different names, under different names during that lifetime, whereas travellers just means that that one god or that one primordial appears in multiple mythologies or in multiple iterations of humanity.
Yeah, I think that's him anyway.
And the difference is whether or not
And we got a random encounter first, don't you?
whether or not they just appear in a single lifetime of a traveller, and specifically a travelling god, something here we talk about often here on the channel, and they'll pop up more and more often as we get deeper into these topics here on the channel. Alright, now with that disclaimer out of the way, let's hop down this rabbit hole, Alice. It's going to be a hell of a ride. So let's start with Mommy and Daddy Loki. Now, usually when Loki is referred to in any sort of context, he's almost always referred to as the brother of, or the son of his mother or his father. The most common of those would be, the most prominent forms that Loki is mentioned in would be the Loki Senna, which is the conflict with known as the Beast of Aegir, which is pretty much the end of Norse mythology, just before we get to Ragnarok. And then you have Gylfaginning, and of course you have the Baldur Draum. Gylfaginning is one of the more prominent poems used in the Eddas, and of course the Baldur Draum is how Loki was about murdering Baldur, which sort of goes off and kicks off all of the events of the event.
Moss dresser, honey. Not cross, moss. I think that's the innuendo they were going for anyway.
We need to go over some more terms real quick. There is a difference between a Jotun and a giant. Now, usually when we are talking about giants or stature, very significant male giants in Norse mythology. Usually they are Gylfaginning or Gylfaginning, which are female giant texts. And those giant texts are almost always also referred to as trolls. So, and also that's related to Loki in the sense of emotion. This is referred to as a troll. Now, Gylfaginning means, and it refers to size. And when you're talking about male giants are referred to as things like power person of towering stature. That refers to their size. Jotun means like eat or at least consumer. And what this is referring to is the ability of these individuals to consume energy. And there is a counterpart to it. You have the Jotun, who are the ice giants. Here they're referred to as ice giants. Now, Loki's father, Barbald, is noted and powerful Jotun. But their counterpart and the other primordial power within Norse mythology are those who hail from Muspelheim, or Muspelheim, and that would be the Thursar. Thursar, it means like thirsty, it means drinker. the two giant groups that we get are not always giant in stature, but are giant in power. The Jotun are those who come from the land of ice, Niflheim. And then there are Thursur, who come from the land of Muspel, the land of fire. And the reason for this is because these two things, fire and ice, what one might refer to as a metaphor. Now, Farmouth's name translates roughly to powerful or dangerous striker, and this is how we know that he was a noted warrior amongst the tribe of the Jotun, while Loki's mother was a noted member.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna switch that out.
Other tribe, a notable woman of Muspel. Now, this isn't something that you're gonna find noted anywhere in Common Academia. This comes almost exclusively from our clan's keeping of these stories. But she was a woman of the Muspels, and she is known as a Thursur in our story. Now, there is so much more to go into on that front below, and that is absolutely
it's Camu.
Video. Next month in our Patreon, big lore drop. Now on Patreon, we are doing 20, 30, 40 minute long, huge deep dive episodes into actual, just pure clan lore, not having these disclaimers about whether or not it's accepted in academia or not. It's just pure clan lore. We're going to start putting out big episodic episodes of that over on the Patreon page. And while we're on that note, I want to take a minute to throw out something. Next month's episode over on the Patreon will be a deep dive into our clan lore surrounding Loki, expanding upon what is mentioned here today in this video, but using exclusively clan lore to do so. And I wanted to take this moment to thank all of you who support my work over on Patreon.
Oh, you shouldn't have said that. Now this will happen.
I do appreciate all of you, both the new patrons who just recently come in, and the long-standing patrons. And I especially want to give a shout out to Ironside Jaeger, who is a long-standing patron and member of the tavern, who donated some very lovely microphones. You can hear me right here a little bit better because Ironside Jaeger donated a very nice set of microphones to the tavern, and that is why the audio quality is now crisp and clean, and you can hear every silky syllable that floats from my, I was going to say flashlight mouth, but that would have ruined the metaphor, and I already did, so there we go. And if you would like to support the tavern in a more intimate way, you can head to the link down below. I'll also put it here on screen. And you can join the Patreon. That gets you into my Discord. At any level, it gets you both into my D&D Discord as well as into my educational Discord for people who want to learn more about my family's traditions, as well as just be a more intimate part of the community. You will also get previews of books that are in the progress of being written by me, both fiction as well as those that have to do with historical and traditional context from my family.
Yeah, he won't let you through, not right away, hon.
Share these traditions with your family in a more comprehensive way and have something to hand down. You'll also get previews of videos as well as early access to my podcast in this epic, which is a book and story podcast where we read books, both family friendly if you want to listen to the kids, as well as we do more adult topics which are currently...
Yeah, honey, you remember that symbol I was telling you when all three characters are ready to transform Dragoon? That this command will do that simultaneously? That's the command I was talking about.
As well as what you would like from the deep dive lore videos. And those are of course packed full of lore that you will not get anywhere else. And it's handed out. Alright, shameless self-promotion out of the way. Bills are paid, the lights of the tavern are still on. Let's get back to Loki. Obviously, the most commonly known story about Loki is how he killed the god Baldur and how he went about being responsible for the death of the god Baldur, the most beloved amongst all of the gods. And not only that, it ensured that he stayed dead. But there is so much more work that Loki put into it before that. So many more people that died at his hand and with before we got to that point. Loki also has 3 children, none of which are animals or monsters, well, at least not in the strictest sense. Well, okay, none of them start out as animals or monsters, let's put it that way. His children are Nari and Narifi, which are often confused to being the same child. In our clan's lore, they are not. They are 2 separate children. But he also has a 3rd child, Narifi. That's 2 sons and a daughter. His eldest son is Narfi. And then he has 2 kind of twins who are called Nari and Narfi. And they are kind of twins because they're twins born of different mothers. And it's almost as weird as just about everything else about Loki. But we'll get into that later on. Loki has a wife named Sigyn, who is a beloved amongst the goddesses. And he has a mistress who is named Angerboda, or Distress Bringer, and as you can imagine, she is not beloved amongst any of the goddesses. He also has a second mistress who is all but unnamed in the common lore, but she's believed to be...
Okay. Dead end, huh?
Loki has 2 brothers, count them 2. Neither one of them is Thor or Odin. And that might upset some of the Marvel fans out there, but he has 2 brothers, one who is older and one who is younger. They are both the children of Barbati and Laufey. And it's entirely possible, now, don't come at me with this, but it is also entirely possible that Loki predates Odin.
Audible is the best place to listen for everyone.
Oh my God.
For story people, comedy people, curious people, and people who want something new right now. Audible has the best of what you love. Download now and try it today.
Yeah, I don't believe you on that one. I really don't.
Because Odin takes the name Allfather later on, and one of the earliest mentions we have of the Allfather is actually before Odin's father is even born. So Odin's father is licked from the ice by the great primordial cow Aldona, and that is after the first giants are already born. And you have to remember, there are plenty of creatures that are older than Odin, and there are plenty of creatures who are even older than Ymir, who is the first giant. But like anything, with time, this all becomes complacent. Now, Loki's 2 brothers exist in the realms of Niflheim and Muspelheim. Those 2 brothers, one is a lord of Muspelheim, and one is a lord of Niflheim. One of his brothers...
Pretty much, yeah, man. That's about it with this.
Loki is responsible for every major death in the Nordic forces leading up to Ragnarok, and many of those deaths are orchestrated in such a way that it leads to Ragnarok. And the victims that land on that list include both of his brothers, but that's also not something you'll find in common lore, as they are scarcely mentioned. I think each of them only has 2 mentions in the whole of the Now, contrary to popular belief, Wormungandr, Fenrir, Sleipnir, none of those are the children of Loki, at least not in the sense of the strictest idea of how one gives birth. They are all born of the mouth of Loki, and we'll get into what that means in just a minute. And what I should say is that they are born of the mouth of Lot. Lot being Loki's true name. Now, Lot comes from the attribution of his parents being of Muspel and of Jotun of Niflheim. The 2 come together to create the heavens. The heavens were born of the products of Muspelheim and Niflheim, and Lot means heaven or air. And Loki is a god of both wind and fire. Something that is also very scarcely known amongst
check something here real quick before we go in there.
Those of the specific domains of Loki. Now he gained the title Loki presumably for 2 reasons. He must not make something exactly. Because of the spinning of lies that he does. It's like a great web of a monstrous spider, raking in everyone with his terrible lies over and over and over again. And while that is definitely important, we believe it's more apt. Is how he learns.
Yeah, that's a flying rat, hon. And I'm not just saying that, that's its actual in-game name. See? Flying rat. Dark elf. Bye-bye. Hit it too soon. Hit it too early. There we go. He's...
We've noted the difference between a web and a net, but the
You think this is a bad maze, hun? Wait till we get to Royal Capital Cadessa later on. That's even worse.
And you might say, well, Loki did this to the gods because the gods did this to me. And she would be 100% correct. But there was no altruism. Loki did it purely for the pleasure of it. But not just pleasure. Loki is the avatar god of a primordial chaos. Fed off of the chaos, off of the constant discord that he created. He did it because it fueled him and gave him...
Well, flying lemurs are flying squirrels of sorts, yeah. Well, they're a little big to be flying squirrels, so yeah, let's go with flying lemurs. I like that one a little better, actually.
And this wasn't the first time that Loki had done so. Loki, as I mentioned, is a traveler of God. And if you look at the story of how Loki goes through Norse mythology, starting out with
here we go.
Causing displeasures and disputes, getting Thor's hammer stolen, getting Thrymr killed by having the hammer stolen, the cutting of Sif's hair, all of these little things that eventually lead to these great massive conflicts. The biggest conflicts with the Jotun are caused because of Mjolnir. Mjolnir is only gotten because of Loki's transgression against Sif. Loki's transgression against Sif is passed off as sort of a harmless joke, but Loki is seamlessly involved with every single step that leads to the war between the Jotun, the Valiant, and Muspelheim, the Earth. And if you include the banquet of Idun, where Loki kidnaps Idun and causes all of the gods to start to lose their immortality, it's very similar to a story of another god of wind and fire.
No, but okay.
Chinese Taoist mythology. And while I would absolutely love to go deeper into that, because there is so much more to these stories, I'm going to have to cut it here for today. Now, if you want videos on any of these topics specifically, of course you can always request them down in the cute section below. Any of the gods or stories mentioned, if you want a specific story, you can always request those down below. The extended, really long, deep dive into all of Loki's story will be over on my Patreon next month, about the middle of next month, and it will be a complete clan lore, so there'll be very little of the academic media in there. It'll be pure lore from the clan, so if you're interested, the support is always appreciated, and I hope that I can marvel you with the stories that have been handed down to me. Thank you so much for joining me, my friends, here in the tavern. I bid thee to stay bloodthirsty, and until next time, remember, all hail the Black Dragon. We'll see you then.
Wish they'd let me dream.
Attack ball.
A little bit.
You have two options.
As I am sure you are aware by now,
Thunderbolt! Shit, I wasn't ready. I didn't start mashing.
Butchered and Frankenstein by every religion and big-headed pious leader and philosopher that was able to keep their grubby little hands on them, mutilated them with oil. They were so far from the original that even their own mothers wouldn't recognize them. And none has been butchered more than the legend of poor old Crom Croch, the ruler of the Bloody Mound, or as we like to call him, the Bloody Golden Dragon. Grab a seat, grab a drink. I've got a story for you.
Let's go, Ashley. Well, hon, I would say that's partially true. I'm sure it'll make sense what I mean here by the end of it.
Likely one of the oldest deities in Ireland, Irish scholars, and by and large the most evil and reprehensible one-eyed snake in all of mythology, with a shout out to to whoever it is that keeps knocking up the Kardashians. Now, he is usually depicted something like this, and while that is odd and just strangely insulting in and of itself, as are most of the Fomorian depictions, he's described more like this. Now, does that sound like worm noodle penis man to you? No, it doesn't. So whoever it was that decided this is how he should be depicted in the books really ought to get their mind out of the gutter. So who was Crom Croch? Well, traditionally speaking, Crom Croch was a creature of a monster of unimaginable power and bloodthirst and disdain and, frankly, nonchalance. He really is depicted as not caring about what is going on around him and being somewhat disregardant to everything that did not have to do with him. He was famous for not giving a flying fluke what you did with your time, and he certainly didn't want you bringing your problems to him. And this inspired many a cult in Ireland over the years. I want to come back to this. In many ways, he is depicted as a leader, a king of some sort, but he most definitely inspired many. He was the object of many inspired deaths through cult-like worship, and he definitely earned his title as Bloody throughout history, at least if we are to take everything at face value. One of the reasons why we are well aware of his age is because there are many standing stones in Ireland, the oldest of which being about 6,000 years old, being dedicated to the worship and or figure of Crom Croch. Now, coming back to the cults that I mentioned earlier were big on worshipping these giant stones, and this was most common around the 12th and 14th century, around the time when Christianity was really having its rise, and there was a lot of battling going on in Ireland itself. And between the 12th and 14th century, there were several cults that popped up over this time, leading in one instance to allegedly more than 4,000 soldiers and a leader actually dying during the occult worship of this stone of Crom Croch, which just added to the reputation of him being this crooked, evil, disregarding ruler of blood and hatred. And these cults sent many a person to see old Daddy Lear in Magmail floating off with all the other poor drowned bastards. So what is the truth of it? Well, if you've been here for a while, you already know I have some clan stories about this guy, and you are going to love them. And if you don't, you get your money back. That's how great they are. Money back guarantee. Speaking of money back, if you have enjoyed the video thus far, a like and a subscribe if you're not already would be appreciated. It keeps the tavern afloat and sends these stories out to others who might find them a little bit aghast and a little bit interesting. So, who was Crom Croch? Well, who's to say? But what I do know is that our clan stories have more than just a few ifs and babies and vague references to blood and mountains, so let us get into those. The most recent image we have of Crom Croch within the clan was actually a chieftain of the clan of the Black. His name was Crom Croch, which translates roughly to the crooked chieftain, the crooked head, the crooked lord of the Bloody Mountain. And Crom roughly means crooked, and Ken means lord or head, chief, something of that line. And then Croch can either be translated as bloody or mound. It really depends on which way you go with it. Now, Crom, in its originality, did not mean crooked, but we're going to come back to that in just a minute. So this chieftain existed roughly 1,700 years ago, and he was a ruthless leader, and as I mentioned, he was a member of the Black. Now, he was much more warlike than we traditionally are. We of Black tend to try and mind our business. It's a lot easier to collect stories when you don't have a target on your back. It's also a lot easier to preserve those stories, histories and traditions when you're not pissing everybody and their neighbours off all the time, which many of us Irish folk never really learned about that. But he was an incredibly powerful warrior and leader. He took no prisoners and he took no crap from no one. And eventually he He was executed by his neighboring chieftains with the help of one legendary saint from amongst Christianity known as Saint Patrick. This Crom was one of the many snakes that Saint Patrick drove out of Ireland. One of the many pagan rulers who was driven out by Saint Patrick. And it is this image of Crom, this great chieftain, that would later be worshipped by these cults. This idea of a ruthless and bloody man, a man who cared only for himself and cared very little for others. I can't even guess the same thing, just the same thing. But those cults that would later end up dying actually very mysteriously. We don't actually know why or how they died. It could have been disease, it could have been self-sacrifice, it could have been forced sacrifice. It was a leader named Haggard Nass who ended up being the guy who was leading this cult of Crom worshippers, and it was his men who ended up dying, and eventually he who ended up dying. So we don't actually know 100% how they all passed, but what we do know within the clan is that they were worshipping the image of this chieftain from about 400 odd years. Now let us take a few more steps back, several thousand years back, and step firmly into the realm of mythology. Crom Croch was a mighty dragon, and if you look at his description that I showed earlier in the story, he is described as a serpent-like dragon. And there are some scholars who acknowledge this, but for some reason, he's always depicted in a much different way. The only semi-accurate depiction we actually get of this character is in the Book of Kells, or the Secret of Kells. And the imagery there is fascinating. I might do a whole video breaking down our clan's parallels to the imagery that is shown in the Secret of Kells, because I actually really like a lot of the things that they included in the film, because it speaks to a lot of the lore that we have kept over many, many years. Now, when I say that Crom Croch was a dragon, he was actually two dragons, and these dragons were primordial avatars. And I've talked about primordial avatars more. These are the embodiments, these are the physical bodies of gods, and this particular god was a god of Dragseal. And for those of you who've been around a while, Dragseal is basically like neutral energy, it's balance energy. It's the energy from which all things in nature hang from, and it's usually represented by the image of a dragon. So, two dragons, one dark and one light, one of the sea and one of the land and sky. Crom Croch was the grand chieftain, or the high chieftain of the Tuatha and the Fomorians.
And we're done.
He was the ultimate ruler of the gods of Ireland, as well as the keeper of all knowledge past, present, and future. He is the uncle of one Lu, as well as the uncle of a certain Norse god who was, in fact, a traveller. He was a great lover of battle, and people travelled from all around to try and take a piece of his flesh. And he sat atop the highest mound in Ireland, as well as the highest mound in Magmail. And there he sat waiting for challengers to come to him, and all fell between his mighty giant feet and hands and wings and claws and all of the things, until his mound became soaked with the blood of the lives of those who came to challenge him but never made it home. Now, for those of you who love to celebrate pagan festivals, I've got something fun for you. When you're seeing this video, it should be on a Tuesday, should be the day after the start of the Lammas festival for the neo-pagans. For those of you who follow older traditions, it is the start of Lunessa. Now, the Sunday before, which is now considered to be a Sabbath, which I don't really particularly like that word, but we'll talk about that in another video, it is called Lammas Sunday. Lammas Sunday precedes, it is July 31st, and it precedes Lammas or Lunessa. Now, if you want to go with the historical version, which is the version that our family still follows, July 31st is Crom Croch Day. And it is the day when sacrifice was brought to the foot least that's what the spooky neo-pagan story is. However, it's a little bit more fun and a little bit less dire than that in reality. In reality, the day before Lunessa was essentially the harvest time. It was when the first harvest of this cycle should have been brought out, and what would happen is, in the time of the gods, they would bring the bounty to the foot of Cromcroch, and he would judge whether the bounty merited the festival, whether there had been enough of a bounty for them to celebrate the prosperity, and if there was, then the festival of Lunessa would commence. If there was not, Lunessa would be a single-day games festival. It would be when weddings were held, business arrangements were made, and there would be one singular day for the men to prove their mettle in the games of Lunessa, in the eyes of Lune.
Pretty much, yes, and that was the process of events. Long story short, yeah. That's the power of the white silver dragon, though, huh?
Away the clouds to allow the sun to shine through, and the sun would stay shining throughout the entirety of the Lunessa Games Festival. And it is one of the most grand and grandiose festivals of both ancient times and modern times. So July 31st is Crom's Day, Crom's Day of Sacrifice, when we look back and see if we have the bounty that is required for the festival we desire, and then comes Lunessa. So what exactly happened to Cromcroch, the great and mighty dragon? Well, like all of the gods of Ireland, eventually he was pushed beneath the mounds and he became a little person. He became a part of the Aoshi, the little people beneath the mounds. But unlike his fellow gods, he didn't stay there. Cromcroch kept bubbling back up to the top of his bloody mound, and his legend lived on in fear and infamy throughout the minds and consciousness of children and men alike, all the way up until the 19th century. All the way up until the 19th century. And mind you, it wasn't until the end of the 19th century that his legend faded into obscurity. He became the crooked lord of the mound, the evil leader, the evil king of the dark fae, until eventually he faded away and died. He died on the same mound that he once ruled as a noble beast and warrior. So there's an old saying in our clan that says,
Okay, Glory of Styx is done, so Summon for Gods is next. Also, Rod Typhoon not quite done yet, okay. But Hatchsolo now has his new one to work on, the Summon for God, if I remember.
The attitude that the gods had towards people and the people had towards them. It was more of a standard of personal excellence. To become the greatest warrior, nobody went to the foot of Cromcroch to worship him. No, they went to his feet to fight him, to beseech him for battle, not to have him take care of their problems or whisk them away to some magical...
I feel like we might still be missing a Stardust, but we'll figure it out as we go.
No, they either wanted to slay him or die by his hand. No one thought of Crom, and Crom thought of no one, until they found themselves at his foot, at the base of his mound, and they died by his hand. Happy Lunessa, my friend, I bid thee well from all of us here at the tavern. And just a brief reminder, if you are interested in the longer, more episodic...
Shit, I forgot it was a new one. I was trying to do the flurry again. The previous one.
plethora of other pieces of content, including books I'm writing, as well as unreleased content here and my podcast. And just as a brief announcement, I have turned on memberships here on the channel for those of you that don't want to go over to Patreon, but you would still like to receive the video.
Alrighty, take two.
As well as get into my two Discord channels, one for educational purposes and one for my D&D community.
There we go.
Those are active now. You can click the join button to see see what you get if you are so inclined. But you can get the video essays, it'll be the same.
Like the Summon 4 Gods, you mean, hun? Because like the different attacks we can do, is that what you're referring to? Just to make sure I understand?
Any which way, memberships are now available here on the channel. And for those of you who do join, it is greatly appreciated. And if you enjoyed engaging the subscribe button in Mortal Kombat is always appreciated. You'll know you've won when the blood drains from its body and it becomes a deathly grey. And the like is always appreciated because it allows for other adventurers like yourself to find their way to
yeah, well, those are the various attacks that you can pick from. Like when it says addition in the menu, hun, it pretty much that's another way of saying there are various different attacks.
I welcome you to the tavern, and the tavern itself welcomes you as well.
Thank you,
Until next time, stay bloodthirsty, my friends, and remember, all hail the Black Dragons. I'll see you in the next one.
Hey everybody, just as a reminder, I'm a narrator on Chilling, the awesome horror app that features over 1,000 horror stories, over a dozen narrators, some of who you might know from YouTube, as well as full-length novels and exclusive series.
I have a feeling I have to go see Resident Knight Harris now.
Select and change the ambient sound.
Well, let's see if we can talk to the mayor first.
Not affected the story that you're listening to, and we release hours of new stories every week. Click the link in the description to download and start your free trial to see if you like it.
Okay. Let's go then.
I was from the city. I had dreams of escaping the busy day-to-day shovels of it all, and always dreamed of living in a small town away from everything. After months of hunting and arguing with realtors, I found some property that I wanted to call my own, and start a new life with my son. It was a small farming town in Kansas, with a population of around 2,000 people. It was perfect. I bought the land, packed me and my son Elijah.
Do it for
We made our journey to our new home. Looking back on it, he was more excited about it than I was. And I was pretty excited myself. Me and my son's escape from everything and started fresh in a new chapter.
To the hotel!
My son was just coming up on 9 years old. His new school was close to our new farm and didn't have many friends in the city. So I knew the move was going to be good for him.
Go.
His mother,
I'll stay for a
my
night.
wife, had passed away when he was at an MBA. It was a mess. So I was filling in as both parents. He was very active though. Always energetic and curious. Just like his mother.
Double check these real quick. Yeah, because we started with Double Slash and we've been going pretty much right down the line. Rush Dance is where we're at, and Madness Hero would be the next one. And there's two more here. And here's the thing, hon, the reason I do them in order is because, you have to max out every editions from 1 to 6 for Dart here. And only after you max those out, then the 7th one will show up. And that's the same rule for each character that has editions, so. Like for Rose, I have to max out the first 3 for number 4 to show up. The same thing for Hatch Silva, his is number 6. Number 5, and so on and so forth, so. But yeah. Okay, so I think I'm going to switch up my team a little bit just to kind of hopefully keep some of them decently balanced. Yeah, we'll swap out to... Yeah, we'll swap to Rose. And Congo for now. Why the hell does he have the Desktone amulet on?
Elijah could barely contain himself in the passenger seat when he was allowed.
Yep, and with her being a glass cannon, I'm gonna put the physical ring on her, hun.
I parked the car in the user near the fields, putting down the walking path while we had a call.
Yeah, we'll keep the talisman on
I
her,
also
though.
started making my way into the path so I could finally scope it all out in person. One thing the photos didn't show was the number of crows.
Yeah, we'll put the spirit ring on him for now.
It was overwhelming. They did forewarn me that it wasn't just a game. Crows did anything happen to survive. There were double the amount of what it showed in the property photos. That didn't let it get to me though. It was the least of her issues. I knew there would be a couple things they would try to sneak past.
There we go.
Dad, look over here. I heard Elijah yell in excitement. I made my way over to him to see what he was so excited about and what he was staring at. It was a scarecrow. I walked up next to Elijah and he was so excited to see it. It was positioned on this tall wooden cross that...
Oh, somebody's mad. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it, yeah. That's about it, hon, yeah.
The scarecrow was like a dark figure in it all. It wasn't doing the best at its job. As crows are rested on the cross with it on top of his shoulder.
Alright, thank you.
As I looked closely at its face,
Oh, YouTube might be being weird again, because it looks like it sent it a second time. No big deal to me, just pointing that out, though. I'm thinking that might be a glitch in their system, son, is my guess at this point. Because I literally just watched how that happened, and that didn't look like the timing was too perfect for that to be someone else, you know? Too perfectly lined up, I'd say. To the item shop! Alrighty. That sounds about right there.
Elijah thought on it for a bit. He looked around the farm and at all the crows and then back to the scarecrow. Tobias, traitor to all crow kind, he said with such an innocence in his voice. Honestly, giving you a name like that made it seem more right scary than they are. Well, Tobias it is then. With an arm around on my son. Come on, let's go get things unpacked and check out this place. I said, directed him back toward the direction of the car.
To the left! Talk to the fisherman.
A couple of weeks were great. I started getting a handle on the whole farm life. Got all the equipment and the tools that we needed. Some minor fix-ups around the house and the barn. I told Elijah soon that we could start picking out some animals. We even made our way into town, getting to know a lot of the locals. Many of them had never even heard of Crow's Rest when I brought it on, which was strange to me with how close the town was. They were excited about the corn that I was promising everyone now. Everything was perfect until it all started happening all at once.
To the right.
I was working on the barn out
That's
back,
right.
on the opposite side of the crops, away from the house. I was giving it a fresh coat of paint that it desperately needed.
Alright, so honey,
I heard Elijah
Jim's gonna be picking me up here before long, so He said he's gonna come around 8 o'clock, so I'm gonna go like, well, I'm gonna look around here just a little bit, and then I'm gonna come to the safe point. We'll call it for now anyway.
I grabbed my brushes and walked over to where the walkway that went through the field. Elijah, I said again, and then he popped out from the crowd.
Okay, so we can sell one at the
Looking at me like he did something wrong and he was scared to be in trouble. I tried to see what was the matter. What's up, buddy? Who are you talking to out there at the birds? I said jokingly.
Ooh, we got this big fellow guy here.
I was talking to Tobias.
Alright.
He said, still nervously. I didn't think much of it, so I added to it. Oh yeah, what did Tobias have to say?
This thing is monstrous, by the way, for what it can do. Like that, for example.
I continued to joke.
I plan to, honey, depending on how stoned I am by the end of it, but that's the plan, though.
Walking back towards the barn side. Tobias doesn't talk much. He just listens. He waved at me, so I waved back at him and asked how he was. Elijah said, "It must have been the Crows movement, and you got confused."
And hun, to clarify, this is what's called a wounded bear, apparently. It's a really funky-ass looking bear, I'd say, but okay.
He is made of straw after all. But Elijah interrupted me before he finished.
There we go.
It does move, Dad. I've seen it. He yelled out at me. I had no idea what he was talking about or how even to respond back to it. Are you sure about that one, buddy? When did you see such a thing? Or have I been missing something? I said, clearly arguing with my 9-year-old about if a scarecrow had moved or not.
So where is it? Where's my food?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not if a scarecrow had moved or not. Well, he waved at me, and he leaves his cross at night. I see him moving around the field sometimes. And last night, he didn't come around. My heart stopped. What did he just say? Other stuff I could let go to his wild imagination. But if he saw somebody standing in front of our house, that's when it started to become alarming to me. Wait, you saw somebody stand in front of our house last night? You see that you were walking out in the field. Why haven't you told me about any of this until now? Elijah looked nervous like he was in trouble for not mentioning it any sooner. This was concerning. I tried to level with him on it.
Yeah, honey, I think I'm gonna call it after this battle here.
I gotta know about money. Can't have people running around on property. It's not safe. I tried reassuring him that someone was stalking around the body. I didn't know about it. I'm glad that he told me now, so I can keep an eye out for it.
There we go.
People know that. It's divided as such.
Come on, hit one of them.
Scarecrow, which in reality was probably very on that.
There we go.
I want to argue with him and upset.
Alright, honey, I'm gonna save the game. And then I'm gonna call it for now, hon. And I'll call you later tonight. I love you too.
Fields as we started to head back to the house. Looking at Tobias hanging there when we were heading out of the field. That night after dinner, I put Elijah to bed and was on my computer working for a bit. I still worked from home for a bit because we were doing the farm now. Just to make sure that gas was still.
Alrighty, I'm gonna play, honey.
Usually till about midnight.